Thank you for joining us for this episode of DTNsights. I am the host, Renny Vandewege, General Manager of Weather and Climate Intelligence for DTN, joined with a dear friend and a person that we just had to fight to get on this podcast. He's so popular and so famous. It is none other than Doug Chenevert, the Director of Forecasting Platform at DTN. Doug, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I welcome the opportunity, Renny. Thank you.
Doug, you've been an employee for a while at DTN. We don't have to say how many years unless you want to say how long it's been. You're a young looking guy, but you've been around for a while. I think that's so cool. Could you mind going through your history with DTN and sort of how you ended up here?
Sure. I graduated with a degree in meteorology from the University of Wisconsin. Like you said, a long time ago, but it's okay. 1983. So in May of 1983, I received my diploma. And then in June of 1983, June 15th, I started working as a shift meteorologist for, at that point in time, a company called Kavoris. It was called Kavoris because it was run by a guy named Steve Kavoris. And it was a family business to some extent. We all knew each other's wives, kids, had I would say a family type atmosphere, but it was obviously a business as well. So I started working night shifts quite frequently. That was because my wife, who was a nurse in the neonatal intensive care unit, could also work nights, and her schedule could align with mine. So back in the day, we worked 6 days in a row, had 3 days off, 6 days in a row, and we both worked nights, 6 nights in a row, and then had 3 days off and then worked another 6 nights. So I did that for about 6 years. And then I was made an offer to move into software engineering as a programmer. Now, I wasn't an expert at all in software development, but being a meteorologist at a company that was working with weather, I picked up a few tips and tricks and did that for a few years. I'm fond of saying once Kavoris management figured out that I wasn't very good at software development, they made me a manager. And then I've had about 30 years of management experience at Kavoris. DTN then purchased Kavoris around 2000. We've had a number of ownership changes, and now I've landed as responsible for a forecast platform at DTN. They still don't let me do any real software development, so I'm a manager.
You were surrounded by an unreal team of people that are very skilled at that and skilled at forecasting and meteorology. I'm curious, over those 40 plus years, as you described, including the last 25 or so officially as part of DTN, how have you sort of seen the company change from what problems you were trying to solve at the beginning to the problems you get to solve today?
And that really has been a journey. The Kavoris time was largely around a media business. So the weather data that we provided, a lot of it went to DTN for their agricultural consumers. And then Kavoris also had a strong media partnership and business. Those were the main thrusts of what we did then. In the 2000s and beyond, we've grown, at least in my opinion and my understanding, into solving more business-related problems in the areas for customers that we serve. In the utility industry, in agriculture, obviously remains a big focus for DTN. Aviation has been a focus for DTN, but we've moved from being a data provider of forecast information and other information into insights and helping people solve their problems in a business efficient way. And one of the things that I think makes me wake up in the morning and be excited, frankly, to come to work is, you mentioned the team that we have around us is just extraordinary, but also helping those businesses solve problems. But it's larger than that, because those businesses serve the larger public around the world, and keeping people safe, providing food, fuel, and protection is something that, to be honest, it's not just a placard. It's kind of a charter. And that's something that I really enjoy.
Yeah, it's we're really blessed to get to do that and solve some pretty complex problems where weather is a risk to critical infrastructure, critical supply chains. And as you mentioned, that ends up getting to the general public, right? You want your power to stay on. You want to be able to eat. You want to, these are really transport safely from one place to another, whether that's, land, air, sea. We sort of touch all of those. From the industry perspectives, you mentioned you graduated from Wisconsin as a meteorologist. How have you seen the industry change over that time from, I mean, you think back to how you're forecasting back in the early mid 80s to today. How have you seen that change?
Well, I still recall the fact that back in the day, we each had our box of colored pencils and markers, and we literally created surface analysis maps based upon printouts of data. And we each had our own box. And at the end of our shift, we would tuck our box into our little cubby and then come back the next day. That's just a small window into the manual aspect of forecasting and weather business relationships to today. A lot of that, and frankly, a significant majority of it, has become automated and simpler, but it hasn't replaced the human element of looking at weather, determining when and where the changes from our forecast models need to be made, and then tailoring that information to a customer base that is extremely more sophisticated as we've gone forward. It used to be sufficient to give folks a forecast. Now the expectations, and really the way it needs to be, is we need to provide business type decision support to people who are responsible for their own industry. So that's just been a dramatic change. It was good enough then to be able to just be a data provider. That's what we were. And now we want to help be a decision support provider.
Couldn't say it better myself. So over that time and as a manager, you've had the opportunity of what I would describe as work on multiple forecast systems, right? There's been an evolvement over the time in the way we forecast. There's stats on, yesterday's 2-day forecast is as accurate as today's like 5-day forecast over that time period. We've seen this unbelievable advancement. So what are those types of systems, those forecast systems and outputs that you've seen over time? And my mind is going to maybe a point-based forecast system versus gridded. How have you seen that evolvement and sort of in the advancement in the way we can forecast evolve?
Sure. In my mind, there can be a place for both point-based systems and forecast systems. I'm sorry, gridded-based forecast systems. In the way I think of it is there's a ledger of pros and cons. A gridded forecast system is available everywhere around the world. So no matter where a person or a customer finds themselves, whether they are traveling, whether they're in an individual point, whether they're near a city, an airport, or whether they're out somewhere else, a gridded forecast system will always provide an answer. And because of that, I think there's a lot of advantages to a gridded forecast system, improving it over time with something we'll probably talk about down the road in the remainder of the podcast, but it's always on, it's always available. A point-based forecast system is not. One might have to spin up a forecast point system for an individual that is moving around. And sometimes that doesn't scale as well either even though there's been tremendous advancements in high performance computing and cloud computing. If one has to create a forecast for each new point, it may not scale to the same extent as a system that's already available, but can be enhanced and make it better. And that's one of the challenges our team needs to take on, and we lean into. How can we continue week by week, sometimes day by day, to look at our system and make sure that we're making it as accurate and cost effective as it can possibly be.
Awesome. If I asked you to describe the DTN forecast system that we have today, that we provide to customers, how would you describe the kind of technology and the capabilities that it has?
Sure. It's a cloud-based system. It's a machine learning-based system. And what we did when we DTN merged with and acquired some other weather companies, we undertook an exercise where we wanted to try to take what I referred to as the best of breed. So there were 5 or 6 different forecast systems that were available to us. Each one of them solved their own business problems in unique ways, and they were all very successful. One of the challenges that we undertook then was to try to determine what components or pieces of each of those forecast systems we wanted to combine into our singular one DTN forecast that has now been around for a few years. The challenge was that some of those were point-based, some of those were grid-based, some of those were relating to numerical weather prediction models that were run on site. Some of them were just statistical-based. What we have done is we've incorporated a large number of models, weather models, numerical weather prediction that we run on site. Some of those include MPAS. We also run our own AI models. We can talk about that a little bit later. And then we also incorporate forecasts from national meteorological agencies around the world, such as the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, the Australian Bureau of Meteorology, the National Centers for Environmental Prediction here in the States, as well as some others. So what we do is we take all that information in, we compare all of those forecasts to what we call ground truth, and we're constantly updating the ground truth. And then we see which models are performing well, and we allow the influence of those to increase when they're performing well. And when they're not performing well, we ensure that their influence decreases. The thing that I think it makes our forecast system unique is we do that on every grid cell around the world, for every parameter, and for every hourly time step out to 15 days. So the example is fairly straightforward. Maybe over Amsterdam, a certain model has been performing well at 24 hours for temperature. We understand the biases. We understand performing well is never going to be perfect. If the model has been too cold or too warm, we use that in our statistics and our meteorological machine learning to adjust the influence and try to make the best forecast for Amsterdam for temperature for 24 hours. Conversely, maybe over in Beijing, the wind speed at 144 hours has been handled much differently by other of those input models. So you can see where I'm going. Every grid cell, every parameter, every hour is its own little statistical and meteorological machine learning calculation. That gives us, we think, an extraordinary system that is capable of being improved, but right now is extremely accurate for our customer base.
Yeah, it's an amazing technological accomplishment, but then it also provides a really fascinating flexibility to do things with that forecast that provide the insights to our customers. What are some of the examples of how that becomes an input into providing even additional insights on top of just the forecast itself?
When I referred to that ground truth earlier, we can take in observations not only from national meteorological centers, but we can take in observations from our customers. And that will continue to help influence the forecasts for those customer locations where we can have data for it once we are allowed to share the data. So that's an important point. Some of those observations may be proprietary, and in that case, we're not allowed to share them. Beyond that, though, I think one of the other things that makes the system unique is our ability to run our own weather models. We have some numerical weather prediction specialists, PhDs, doctorates in atmospheric science, who run those models, and we can tune the area of influence to where we have customer density that can require additional inputs. So in that way, we can move and add to our areas of focus depending upon where DTN needs us to do so.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then let's sort of move into AI a little bit. AI in forecasting is a really hot topic of a rapidly evolving world. What are some of the benefits just of AI in forecasting in general you've seen? And maybe it's not all perfect. What are some of the pitfalls that you've seen in AI in weather modeling as well?
Well, as I'm fond of saying, and I've said to you a couple of times in our conversations, one of the pitfalls or dangers is this perception that AI weather models will make forecasting perfect, and it'll also cure male pattern baldness. It won't. All right.
Well, I'm an example of that. Yes,
I didn't
absolutely.
say that because I was on with you,
That's
Renny.
okay. You
Okay.
say that as a person with the most perfect hair in history, right?
Don't
It's
know about
amazing.
that either, but no, and I'm joking, but I'm not. As in everything else, AI weather models are another tool in the toolbox, and they are becoming extremely valuable, and one needs to take advantage of that. I think our system, as I described it earlier, is perfectly capable of doing that, and we run them, and we can talk about our collaboration with some other industry leaders here in a few minutes. But AI models in and of themselves have been trained so well on so much data that they are surpassing some of the other weather models that we have seen in the past. Again, they're not perfect, but because of that vast amount of data, they can be able to pick up on trends, sometimes earlier and sometimes lock in on significant weather events more quickly than perhaps some deterministic or physics-based models can be. So they're coming at it from a different angle. And the other thing, because they've been trained earlier, they are extraordinarily fast to run, and in many cases, extraordinarily cheap to run. That brings back a benefit that I neglected to mention in one of your earlier questions, and that is this. We are now running AI within the DTN forecast engine, and because they are so fast and because they're so cost effective, we can run hundreds or thousands of simulations or predictions on a given event. Let's say a tropical weather system or a hurricane. Because we can run a large number of cost-effective simulations, we now can get a spread for a significant weather event like a tropical weather system, perhaps an atmospheric river, other extreme events, cold and heat waves. And we can provide our customers via the DTN forecast system kind of an outline in terms of confidence, to make a point quite obvious. If all of these simulations and the other models in our mix are all converging on a given solution, obviously our meteorological community and the forecast system is going to increase the confidence level in that solution. Whereas if nobody is agreeing on anything and the forecast for the tropical storm, hurricane, or atmospheric river can go anywhere, it makes it a little more challenging to come up with a forecast. That information is something that our customers deserve to know about. And our customer base, you've been talking about history. That's another thing I've really observed. Excuse me. Our customer base has become so much more sophisticated. They are looking for probabilistic forecasts. They are looking for confidence. They're looking for ways to maximize the benefit of the forecast engine into their business. With the advent of these models that we can run in a cost-effective way, we can provide better confidence and probabilistic data to the customer base.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating. I have the honor of getting to interact with a lot of our customers, and you said something very important there, which is understanding probability. It's really a measure of risk, and when you're making at times multi-million-dollar decisions based on a future forecast, you want to understand the likelihood of outcomes, the different scenarios that are possible. And we do this in our daily lives without even recognizing it. It could be there's a chance of thunderstorms and I'm playing around a golf with a bunch of metal sticks in my hand. I'm taking a risk that a storm could pop up and lightning could strike. I need to weigh that balance out if I feel it's safe. In a business, that could be literally deploying hundreds of people or not deploying them, and you have to live with the outcome of that decision. And if you can look at a range of possibilities overlay that with your risk tolerance for the decision you're going to make. You can make the smartest, most efficient operational decision. And that's what our forecast system is. I think what you're describing is really the flexibility and power of it.
Yeah, I don't know that I can understand the pressure that some of our customers are under when they need to make an important decision that may affect, obviously millions of dollars. And then again, in some of those situations, lives are at stake. So I
Absolutely.
think it's our obligation to do what we can to provide the data in such a meaningful way to help reduce the risk and give those people confidence in the decision that they have to make.
Yeah, one of the other really cool things that DTN's worked on is, and you've mentioned tropical in your example, is an AI-based tropical forecasting system, which I think is a fascinating set of technology and IP that we've created. But what we learned, right, over time, when you have all of this data, that the extremes that occur at times can be muted when you run all of these simulations. So if you don't mind describing a little bit of what we've done with tropical forecasting to make sure that we're running simulations on the tropics itself or the hurricane itself, as opposed to letting it lose some of its power inside of an entire modeling system.
That is a real danger. And if you were to simply take the inputs of all the forecast solutions that come in and to oversimplify, to just merge them together and take the average, you would, by definition, oftentimes push the intensity of the system down in such a way that it's just not going to be realistic. So what we've done is a couple of things. We've instituted some machine learning in and around the precipitation shield to try to distinguish the precipitation shield and the wind that is associated solely with the tropical system, and distinctly separate that from the winds that are associated with the background synoptic weather situation. It took a while to do that, as you can imagine. A lot of meteorological expertise using something that I learned in college back in the early 80s called vorticity. So we were able to try to distinguish the vorticity components in the wind field associated with a storm versus those components associated, again, with the background synoptic weather. And then we could isolate or insulate the storm itself. And now that we've got something we can operate on, now we can use those simulations and other forecast information to try to just simply, but not simply, because this is something one of our PhDs on our team has really enjoyed working on, but also took a long time. That is to operate on the storm. And then comes the hard part of pushing it back into the background global forecast system in such a way that you didn't just drop an egg on the sidewalk. So once again, there's meteorological expertise, there's statistical and mathematical expertise in distinguishing the storm, operating on it, creating the best possible forecast we can, and therefore not losing the intensity, and then gently merging that in to an hour by hour forecast for the next 7, 8, or 9 days. That took some work, but frankly, we're really proud of what we've got. And in fact, are pursuing and should be granted a patent on that work in the coming year. We've crossed all of those gates. It's some really unique stuff.
Yeah, it's really an amazing accomplishment, and we're seeing a lot of storms with rapid intensification. And we saw what happened most recently across Jamaica. Being able to get advanced warning on these really impactful and powerful storms, doing it with precision, understanding how fast they're increasing in intensity is going to make a major difference in the years ahead.
Yeah, that's something that seems to be a newer phenomena, if you will, and that is that completely rapid intensification. Yeah, I think in the decades past, in many ways, you could model how a system might change over time based on a lot of aspects: wind shear aloft, oceanic water temperatures, things like that. But recently, the explosion of a storm in a very short time period We've seen several storms like that, and most recently you referred to Melissa. That's one of the things that our machine learning aspect of the forecast system can pick up on more quickly. And again, we did a very good job with Melissa. In fact, I think we're interviewing some of our weather room experts on tropical systems and customer service representatives who were dealing with a refinery in Jamaica as Melissa was forming and approaching, and the results have been very good. Obviously, weather forecasts are weather forecasts. It's very hard to be perfect, but in situations like this that are unique and are really impactful, that's where I think our forecast system needs to shine, and that's where the people on the team are really putting their efforts and energy.
Yeah, really incredible. Well, most recently, DTN announced a unique partnership with AWS and NVIDIA that I know you were front and center and working on. Would love to hear about that partnership and some of the benefits to DTN and the partners in whole.
Yeah, that's been great, and actually, it's been enjoyable. It's fun, to be honest. I could probably try to use a 5-syllable word, but I don't need to. It's been fun to work with industry leaders in NVIDIA and AWS and have people from those organizations say, let's get together tomorrow and talk further. And we get together tomorrow and they say, we'll put a meeting on the calendar for next week, Tuesday. They were aggressive in continuing this collaboration. And what did we do? We worked with NVIDIA on leveraging some of their technology. It's called Earth to Studio. It's part of their digital twin effort. That is an umbrella framework for AI weather modeling that we needed to try to incorporate into our DTN forecast system. And based on the collaboration with NVIDIA and obviously the AI-based chipsets that they have available for us to run these models on, that was, and I'm oversimplifying, Renny, of course, but that was the thing that NVIDIA brought to the table. Obviously, with AWS, we've been an AWS user for our forecast system for years now, but there were some new technologies available from them. And again, leveraging that Earth 2 framework in a cost-effective and scalable, performant way, we needed that three-way stool of the expertise from NVIDIA for the models and Earth 2, AWS for cloud computing, and then what did DTN bring to the table? Obviously, a ton of meteorological expertise and scientific experience in terms of weather modeling. It was just the perfect storm, to put these three organizations together. And this is how we, in June of 2025, were able to begin to leverage AI models within the DTN Global Forecast System. And now we're talking about the next steps. We had a meeting with them 2 days ago where we talked about leveraging more of our own proprietary data, our capability to further train and refine AI weather models over areas with resolution that we need to support the customer base. We're just opening the door. As I mentioned to some customers yesterday, we've created a pathway with NVIDIA, AWS, and DTN, and now we're just going to ride the trucks down the pathway.
Absolutely. Well, those are three powerful companies with a lot of expertise innovating. And I think that's actually probably the story of your career, Doug. This has been a lot of fun to get to chat with you and hear about, getting your company issued box of colored pencils all the way to talking about artificial intelligence with AWS and NVIDIA. It's a cool snapshot of a career and how much progress has been made both inside the company in your personal career and then what we're doing for customers. Major kudos to you and your team on the advancements that we've made. We know it makes a monster impact.
I use the word fun on purpose. Matter of fact, that might even be in my LinkedIn profile. I've been around for a long time. I wouldn't still be here if I wasn't waking up every day looking forward to doing the work that we do with the people that we get to work with.
Well, wonderful. Well, Doug, thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your stories and insights with us. And Thanks to everybody watching this episode of DTNsights. We appreciate it. Thanks again.